edge, and I say edge because I think it was a close one. Yes, Golding gave a good account of himself, but he tended to weaken towards the end, and I think Holness had his head in front after 90 minutes.
I'll allow the youngster to go first.
I'll say it was a showdown of showdowns. I think it met the expectations of Jamaicans. It was the strongest of the debates, I think, that we saw in this 3-debate cycle. I think Mark Golding came out swinging at the start. He was strong and tough on the accusations of corruption against Andrew Holness, and that dominated much of the debate. But I think over time, he got frazzled. Mm-hmm. And I think over time, Andrew Holness strengthened. Particularly after some of the breaks, maybe some of his aides talked to him and reminded him that he needs to respond to some of these accusations, these corruption accusations. I think he got stronger as the debate progressed at Andrew Holness, because I think he had a slow and a little bit of a rough start. He wasn't making the best use of his time, and he had other issues. He was leaving many things on the table. That being said, I don't decide this debate on the corruption issue. I think it was pretty much a wash. Both men traded blows at each other in relations to integrity and accountability. I think on the areas where we saw policy come up, though, on matters of constitutional proposals, tax policy, employment and skills training, standard of living and opportunities for persons living with disabilities, I was encouraged by the inclusion of so much policy in this debate. And I think on that, Andrew Holness had the clearer message. So because he had the clearer message, I was a little disappointed because he underperformed in the sense that I'm used to the Andrew Holness that lays out the big, bright vision for Jamaica, and we saw some of that in the closing speech. But I think he was clearer at least than Mark Golding on giving prescriptions for Jamaica on those policy issues and in talking some good about the achievements and the successes of his administration. So I give it to the Jamaica Labour Party. I give it to Andrew Holness on the matters of policy, not on this question of corruption and integrity.
Nadine.
I think he got laid out of the starting blocks on the matter of defending the Integrity Commission issues. And I think when he did, he did so solidly. I think it's difficult to defend when you are trying to play by the rules and your opponent is not. And I think he was trying to play by the rules at first, but Mr. Golding wasn't. He was bringing up everything that was in the public space, all the things that were proven and disproven. And I think that, there's a point at which you have to decide whether you're going to defend yourself or not. And I think Andrew Holness has been playing the game of, I do not want to have anything to say about it. Because I think eventually he came to the recognition that he had done, and he did so solidly. I agree that he really was clear on matters of policy. On the matter of constitutional reform, which is clear to my heart, Mr. Golding misrepresented this case exponentially. And I was bothered by it because I said to myself, if this is something that I know about and I as observer can sit and say, you are misrepresenting this matter, what other matters are you misrepresenting? And so his credibility took a shot at that point, and I don't believe anything he said. So for me, in this particular matter for which I'm implicated and which I can say he is not telling the truth, he was not credible for me. Yeah. And so I found then his presentations more gimmickry. Because if I know that you're just making up stories, then what you come up with after that, I don't trust you, and I don't know what is truth from what are lies.
And we should tell our listeners you're a member.
I'm a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee, and it came up a lot. Some of the questions did not reflect the truth of the constitutional reform process, it was painful for me to sit down and listen to that part of the discourse, which some of it was just a misstatement of the fact. Okay. And I think the Prime Minister tried to clarify, but I don't know if Jamaicans understand that some of those questions misrepresented the issues.
Professor Blake.
Yes, what a match! I thought that it was a ding dong kind of battle. I think Golden certainly came out to fight. He came out with the dog in him, and you saw that coming out real quick. I think the prime minister started off slowly, was trying to be prime ministerial, trying to be conservative. And I think he really made a gaffe with the integrity thing. It came up early and he should have really counterpunched. He didn't. He missed the opportunity to do that. But as the debate wore on, he really took on that question and he really responded well. I had a kind of a scorecard. I thought issues around trust came up. And for me, the prime minister won the trust issue. I saw a lot of flip-flopping from Golden. A very important issue that came about press freedom and nationwide the allegation about that was there. I thought that Andrew did very well on that question. Constitutional reform, as Professor Spence spoke of, I thought the Prime Minister won there, with crime he won there. The question about Jamaican-ness and Golden's connection is Jamaican, kind of identity. I thought, Golden had a good kind of response to that by walking with his clearly certificate. That was, I thought that was a
moment.
Brilliant.
That was a brilliant moment. But to show the cerebral nature of the prime minister, he came back. He said that, you're Jamaican, it's not just about your birth, but about the choices that you make.
Yes.
And so I thought that was a brilliant comeback by the prime minister. So, again, crime, he won there, the integrity thing. So I think overall, the prime minister was more solid in terms of the policy prescriptions. He had a record to stand on, and he also laid out what is to come. On the economy, the question is still left unanswered by the People's National Party about how are you going to fund this 3.5 and the other things that they have. So overall, I would say that the debate was won by the Prime Minister, but Golden really did all his own and he came out to fight tonight.
Yes. Rashawn.
So for me, this was a very high quality debate. Both men came fighting. They were duking it out from the start until the very end. I thought the Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Holness, started slowly, but he found his footing as the debate went along. Golding started stronger. He had ebbs and flows, but he found back his footing as well, somewhere in the middle, and continued hammering home until the debate ended. I think from the standpoint of effective political communication and messaging, it is clear that the issue and the questions around the PM's integrity and his financial declarations, that dominated. And I think that is the sort of key issue most Jamaicans will remember when they reflect on this debate. What's the one thing that stood out the most? And for me, I thought that was the questions around the Prime Minister's integrity. There were lots of other high points, including that moment when the opposition leader, Mark Golding, took out his birth certificate to sort of put to bed the questions around, where he was born, etc. I thought that was a bit of a master stroke. It was well on television, and I think that will likely be one of the sort of viral moments from this debate. I think it will be captured. It would have been captured by lots of people by their mobile phones taking pictures, etc. I think that moment is going to be circulated quite a bit. So I did think that was, a high point and a master stroke from Golding, and he was able to sort of put that issue to bed in the way Prime Minister Holness, by contrast, just simply was unable to put to rest the questions around his integrity. On policy, Holness was strong, probably as expected, but Golding did a commendable job, I would say, in terms of, making the case for his party and what Jamaica could potentially see with a Golding government. On balance, I think it was close, but I think Mark Golding won this debate.
Rashawn Thompson. Ricardo Brooks.
Yeah, I think it was good. I think it was really good. I think Mark Golding had his moment in the sun. I think people who were wondering whether he could rise to the occasion in the big moment. I think he did that. I think the birth certificate moment was the viral moment of the night. You know, the matter of the prime minister and, as Rashawn put it, putting to bed the matters related to integrity. I'm of two minds on it, because you could see as the debate wore on that he was struggling as to what was the best way to respond. He started out, as everybody has said, pretty calm, measured in terms of responding to it. And then when he realized that Mark Golding was not going to stop hammering at him, he really came back forcefully. At points, he seemed angry. But reasonable people would say that was righteous indignation. This is somebody, a human being. We sometimes forget. Yes, he's the prime minister, but a human being was taken blows now for more than a year, right, on this matter. And then tonight, which I think was really unworthy of Mr. Golding, he then included the prime minister's wife in the line of attack. And I think that was unworthy. I agree that it was close. I'm going to go with the prime minister, and I'm going to go with him because he, I think, had the higher burden of balancing the attacks and of defending a record and putting forward a vision. Those three balls were being juggled through the 90 minutes. At the end of the 90 minutes, I don't think he dropped any of them sufficient for me to say the incumbent lost. But it must be said, Mr. Golding had his moment in the sun. Whether it is enough, it is now for the Jamaican people to decide. But he certainly came across as capable enough to walk into Jamaica House.
Yes. And I would agree with that. I think the views are accurate in summarizing what took place over the last 90 minutes. As I said, at the start, Golding came out of the blocks. Yes, first, setting the pace, yeah, and the trajectory of the evening. And he demonstrated that he could stand on the same stage with Prime Minister Andrew Holness and go toe-to-toe with him. Yes, the Prime Minister's own experience in government and governance and command of policy came through at the end. That closing argument, he simply restated the strongest suit he has going into September 3, performance versus promise. And he delivered that well. For the voter at home who is still undecided, I suspect they may want to feel that in Holness, they can still bank on him. There are some issues, I agree. I don't think he dealt with the integrity issues strongly enough, early enough, decisively enough. Yes, that still remains unsettled, as Rashawn says. While on the policy side of the balance sheet, he did well. He did very well.
Yeah, and you know, the frosty end that, you know, sort of shrugged from the Prime Minister after the handshake, it didn't end well. It ended with both of them, the open contempt that they have for each other laid bare. That's how it ended. And I think ultimately, you know, I don't know if that's good for the democracy, because the tribalists, those who are in the green camp and the orange camp, I think that will be the lasting memory. And it says how very, very passionately divided we are going into next Wednesday as a people.
But some of those attacks were personal.
Yeah, as I said, I think the wife thing was
more personal. And so I think that those who lead, and this was a leadership debate, even as you navigate issues in the public space, you have to think about the impact that this is going, the lasting impact on the democracy. You know, do we win at all costs? You know, what is sacred? What is sacred? What don't we touch? What don't we pull into the fight? You know, and I've seen other political debates where people discuss the issues and never quarreled with each other. And so when the time came for the debate to end, in true sportsmanship style, they went across and they could shake each other's hand, and you could see that
They barely did that.
this didn't happen. And the way it happened, we knew that they didn't want to. So I think it was obvious that this is a brutal one. This was a brutal one.
Bad-tempered debate.
Yeah.
Ronaldinho.
I think the way that ending handshake happened actually reflects kind of the difference in the dynamics for how these two men viewed the integrity issue as either playing into or not the campaign and the election process. Because I think what happened at the end is Mark Golding took more steps. So Mark Golding walked closer to Andrew Holness. Andrew Holness barely moved from his lectern. Mark Golding outstretched his hand. Andrew Holness shook his hand. Mark Golding whispered something to Andrew Holness that it's not clear to us. Maybe it's clear to those who can read lips.
But the shrug he gave.
But then the shrug came from Andrew Holness in response to whatever Mark Golding said. He gave a shrug to Mark Golding, and then he gave a shrug to the audience as Mark Golding smiled and walked away. I think maybe for Mark Golding, this might be more of a tool. So Andrew Holness called it a weapon, said that Mark Golding is using weaponized lies. And it's definitely a sticking point that Mark Golding gets to hammer home and win some electoral points with. But for Andrew Holness, perhaps this is like Dr. Spence said, far more personal, and is an attack on his character, his personal character, and that of his wife. And so maybe we saw the difference in those different attitudes come out at the end.
And it's not the first we've seen it, though. We've seen this in Parliament, where Mark Golding seeking to rattle the Prime Minister when he thought he was on a good trajectory. He brought up the matter of his wife and sought to destabilize him. He succeeded in Parliament. Tonight, the Prime Minister called him out on it. I don't know if we saw that. So I think Mark Golding is throwing everything at this campaign, the kitchen and the cabinet.
It's to her die.
He's throwing everything at it.
So
there are no rules, there are no rules. He's bringing the Prime Minister's wife, his children, everything into it. And the Prime Minister probably, I think, having more of a knowledge of Jamaican political culture and how political leaders perform, he knows that the typical Jamaican politician doesn't bring all of that into the public.
There's something else I want to introduce here in terms of the structure and the rules of the debate. Yeah, because the PNP debaters, were better at floating the rules, coming back to counterattack. The government side was very reluctant to do so, including the Prime Minister for the first half of
and so the rules held him back in the first part. And I think it's after he recognized that the opposition leader wasn't paying any attention to the rules. I think he began to say, okay, well, I'm going to do what you're doing now.
Right. And I'm going to ask the debater among us, Mr. Brooks.
No, Ronaldinho is also a debater.
Oh, Ronaldinho too. Shouldn't we have a moment, a period, when you go at it free? Just go at it.
And that's interesting because in the United States, that's how they do it. In the United States, you have segments devoted to particular issues. So if it's integrity, then, you have a 10-minute stretch where they go back and forth on the issue. I've always said that our format is a bit controlled and it's very sanitized and it really keeps them in a box. But it is what it is and it's what they agreed to. So I don't think it makes sense complaining about the format.
If I might,
but to make it better. This is something we can consider.
I think we can quarrel over the format.
Remember, so them blacklist me. So
man. Go on.
And let me just say it. Let me just take the victory lap. Weren't there, not on the stage, but we name call multiple times. Let me just big nationwide. Let me just say that.
I was going to say, Cliff, that the other thing I found was that I won't say the name of the journalist, but one of the journalists there asked some questions that were not appropriately asked. You cannot begin by saying to somebody you are antagonistic So are you what is the point of that question in terms of beginning from that position? Are you there to query? Am I antagonistic? Explain why you are. Are you telling me that I'm antagonistic and telling me that as a result of my antagonism, I have led to whatever, not press freedom? Or I found some of the questions uncomfortable and they too led into the tension of the debate. I found as well that even for me, who was involved in the constitutional reform process, one of the questions asked by one of the reporters was wrong. The factual base
about the
of
fixed
this
election.
was wrong. And even if it is that at a point in our history, a political party put forward that they were going to change election date, as journalists, you should be able to say to them, Mr. Prime Minister, you can't do that, or our constitution doesn't allow that. You can't make that promise. You can't then feed into that question and then expect a response that has any kind of structure.
But the Prime Minister was strong.
He was strong in
response,
but I just found the questioning to be faulty.
Yeah. Let me hear Rashawn Thompson.
Okay.
I'll come to you next.
Yes,
Dr. Blake.
thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Ricardo. I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points. First, the Prime Minister's disposition at the end of the debate and that shrug. I thought those were telling points, to be honest. At the end of the debate, I feel he felt and came across as a bit unsure, and he wasn't certain where he'd landed. By contrast, Golding appeared much more convincing, much more sure-footed, and was willing and actually went across to embrace the Prime Minister, whilst he was seeming quite reluctant and, as I say, uncertain, not only about that moment and how to deal with it, but his overall performance. And I think that's another, indication of a Prime Minister who was unsure of his performance on the night. He was rattled by an opposition leader in Golding who was able to keep consistently so a narrative, threading throughout the whole debate, which he just simply did not want. And to that extent, I thought Golding was way more effective than Holness. On the point of what is fair game in politics and political debate, I don't think it's a fair argument to say, you know what, Mrs. Holness, the Prime Minister's wife, is ground that shouldn't be touched, because she is a parliamentarian in her own right. She holds high office in Jamaica. She dispenses significant and impactful responsibilities, and she's tethered to the Prime Minister by virtue of being his wife. So I don't think that is a fair argument at all. I think it's a bit specious, if I'm honest.
Dr. Blake?
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of offer, a new layer in terms of, so at this bewitching hour, 4 days before the elections, right? And as a political scientist, I'm saying, who, from this debate, who are they speaking to? Will it have any traction on the ground? And for me, Golding's performance is raw meat to the base. The base is riled up, and that's certainly going to appeal to them. I think Holness's performance tonight and his policy prescriptions will have an appeal to the uncommitted and people who are still undecided at this bewitching hour, right? Coming out of this debate. James Carville said it best, this is one of the guys who was a big campaign director for the Clinton administration. It's this economy stupid. And I think the economic points made by the Prime Minister and the infrastructural point made by the Prime Minister will reach out to the persons who are still on the fence, who are uncommitted. Golding's performance was solid, it was good, it was aggressive, but I think it's going to appeal more to the PNP base than to the uncommitted.
I think you're absolutely correct, Professor Blake, that the performances tonight will play very well to the PNP base, from Mark Golding, but not to the uncommitted, who are not interested in red meat. They are looking like the more rational voter. Who is going to get the job done for me to make my personal well-being that much better? And I think that is where Holness had a clear edge tonight. Clear edge.
I agree. I think, we have already established that on the matter of policy, he was strong. On the matter of siphoning out of vision, he was strong. And clearly stating what his achievements, what his government's achievements was. He was strong on that, and he communicated that confidently. In fact, when you look at how he communicated, that was where he felt more comfortable. When he got to speak of the work of the government, when he got to speak of the policy, when he got to speak of the direction the government was going, he was most confident. So I think that he communicated. It was easy to see on the screen that he was very comfortable when it came on to talking about matters of which most Jamaicans are concerned with.
And if I would follow up, please, I think the now that I'm reflecting on it, I think the Prime Minister's approach might have been a strategy to allow Golding to unleash, to unsuitor, and then he would be and come back and stamp out his points point by point by point, because he knows at this bewitching hour who he's going after. I think it might have been a strategy.
And to Rashawn's point about being rattled, I don't think the Prime Minister was rattled. I think the Prime Minister was demonstrating passion, because here's a man who's been under attack for more than a year. Yes? And he got some blows. Yeah? Golding started throwing the blows early on. And then he realized and came into his own and started to counterpunch. Yeah, I don't think that was rattle. I think that was a man who realized time to take off the gloves now and to show passion. Yeah, and to look at Golding and tell him that he's a liar.
I think some of this disagreement kind of reflects the disagreements that will exist among different types of people who watch the debate. So, for example, there might be viewers of the debate who are not as familiar with the historical matters dealing with corruption and integrity, who might not have known that the PNP has been beating the horse of the integrity of the Prime Minister for this long a period of time, or who might have a short window of short frame of focus within which they have engaged with this political cycle, who might have just seen the debate, seen Mark Golding attacking, and at least in the first half of this debate, seeing the Prime Minister dodge some of the questions of integrity. And I do wonder how many voters that is who would have seen that difference in tone and in posture and been more attracted to Mark Golding because of that. So unlike you, who you would see the Prime Minister's reaction as passion in the end, they may have seen it as just a successful attempt on the part of Mark Golding to agitate the Prime Minister on something that he seemed to be running away from at the start.
Professor Blake, I want you have studied the politics, yeah, in academia. And Nadine, can you tell me, a general election in Jamaica since 1972, that corruption was a decisive factor in determining the outcome? Brooks?
None.
I thought you asked Dr. Blake. I thought you asked Dr. Blake.
Blake?
No, I can't think of one. No.
I think in Patterson's time, there were a lot of public conversations about
Scandals.
Okay.
Audley Shaw and Siaga broke a scandal a week, we would say then.
But
and they spent how many years in the political wilderness?
Still won.
Yeah, and it didn't.
Four consecutive terms.
It did not. People didn't.
And we are seeing it now in the polls. We are seeing it in the polls.
Yeah.
Where at this juncture, the Prime Minister, the Jamaica Labour Party, is very competitive going into the elections in 5 days. We are about to release our Blue Dot polls beginning tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. And it's not a factor.
People want political goods.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, roads, development, education. This issue is not having traction.
You know, Prof, I don't know. You probably know this too. When we study politics and you look at this lens, the theories through which you explain political behavior,
Yes.
One of the theoretical framework that I studied certainly when I was doing my master's was called the materialist, post-materialist debate. What
Yes.
do people who are seeking political, seeking to benefit from political leadership want? And we talk about those who are described as being post-materialist, i.e., you know, we can now talk about the environment. We can now talk about animal rights. We can talk about what are considered to be post-material conversations concerns, because people are now at the point where their basic needs are met, perhaps more than the basic needs are met. Housing is sorted out. So we know we can consider the rights of our pets, you know, and so there are some people in the world who are seen to be living under post-material conditions, but some are living under material conditions. They're still concerned with housing, food, and so on and so forth. And because most of our population to this date are still concerned about the material conditions of life, when they hear politics, they listen for what will impact them right now. And that is why so many people are not paying so much attention to the conversation about corruption, because that does not necessarily impact how their lives will move from point A to point B.
Professor Blake?
Yes, I agree. And when you combine that or compound that with the sense that people have a greater sense of security, they feel a little bit safer, right? The environment in Jamaica is that much safer now, and people are seeing the results of that. And so, you know, I think, you know, the JLP have a strong record to run on. The Prime Minister laid that out. As I said earlier before the debate, that Golden has the burden, the greater burden to show how in the economy, infrastructure, and crime, how are you going to continue the good things, build on the things that aren't going well, and take Jamaica to the next step. And if I was an uncommitted voter tonight, I would leave this space saying, okay, Golden sounded quite aggressive. He was very critical of the Prime Minister's integrity, which is, we know that was coming anyways. But in terms of, is there a clear roadmap going forward for myself, for my children? There are still a lot of question marks on the Golden side. The Prime Minister laid out a roadmap, and he's saying, trust me, give me one more term to finish the job.
All right, I think that's where we're going to wrap it this evening. So in summarizing, Nadine says the PM close, but the PM won. Ronaldina said close, but the PM won. Professor Blake, close. Golden gave a very good account of himself, but the PM did the trick. Rashon said no, the PM was rattled, and Golden won the debate. Ricardo?
I said I thought Mr. Golding had his moment in the sun, but I'd give it to the Prime Minister.
Same here. Yeah, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks to our producer, Cara Powell, working overtime for once. Thanks also to our technical operator, Andrew Anderson. Thank you so much. To our YouTubers, you know, we had 11,500 were online at one point.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, YouTubers. Have a good night. And don't forget, tomorrow morning at 6, the latest and last Blue Dot polls before Jamaicans go to the polls on September 3. Yeah, join us at 6 in the morning, at midday, and at 5:30. We'll tell you the party standings.
And
the
listeners,
numbers are revealing.
Listeners, I've seen it. It's going to be good.
Have a good night.